Thinking of playing Death Ride Kursk, Totenkopf. Okay, so I'm ready to do the Red Army turn. Looking from the Soviet side now, back at the advancing German recon unit there. But I want to say some things about the game system first. So absolutely outstanding system. Continues to be one of my favorite. And the fact that I just went through about a 24-hour rules fiasco, and that doesn't diminish my, interest and interest in playing and enjoyment of the game is probably a huge commentary on the game. So major rules situation, which I'm gonna go over here, but again, probably significant that it just does nothing to dampen my interest in playing the system. So just cannot emphasize enough what a great system it is. And really, as far as I can tell, virtually, I think that the true the experience that it gives is just, I don't know, incredibly underappreciated, virtually unknown. So it is what it is. Not gonna say anything more about that. I find it interesting, but I can't talk about it. Not being a long-time gamer, don't really know. I mean, I know there are no, unlike some other game systems and companies, this system I don't think has any negative press or, doesn't have any negative press associated with it. System, the design doesn't have any negative press associated with it, so that can't be any of it. But anyways, one of the most underappreciated hardcore war games out there, period. All right, so I'm talking about Overwatch here. Okay, how did it come up? So it came up that, so the German units there, I really enjoyed this, by the way, sending a company up, getting it in Overwatch position, and having it actually use Overwatch fire to help the rest of the battalion get up here, and actually got all the way up there, got toe-to-toe with the Soviet front line there. So now, it was, when do the Overwatch markers come off? Well, and why would they come off at all? So no, I guess it was first, hey, where in the rules does it say when the Overwatch markers come off? And in fact, in the version 2.0 that I'm using, it actually never specifies when the Overwatch markers come off. But actually, the rules are set up in sequence of play order, so that makes, it makes sense that I found what I found where I found it, but it was way in the back of the rule book. But that's because it's part of the end of turn activities. There's actually a marker removal step, and the marker removal step basically says remove all markers except for these particular markers, which didn't mention Overwatch. So I guess one was left to assume, okay, remove all markers except for X, Y, and Z. Overwatch markers are not one of those exceptions, so I guess they come off at the end of the turn. And in fact, I jumped up to a later version of the rules, and it now, in the later version of the rules, I don't have them printed out in front of me, so I don't know the number. But in a later version of the master rules, it actually specifies, yes, that the Overwatch markers come off during the end of turn activities phase. Okay, that sounds fine, except that if the Overwatch markers come off at the end of the turn, then my question was, okay, now that I'm going into this Red Army turn and the Soviet units are going to be moving, can these units that are marked Overwatch, can they fire opportunity fire now? So if a Red Army unit, moved here, could the German unit in Overwatch fire opportunity fire at the moving Soviet unit during the Red Army turn? That's never specified. But the only exception, the only spelled out in the rules, the only units that cannot use opportunity fire are units that are suppressed. That's it. I cannot find any other so it never says units that are under Overwatch markers can or cannot fire opportunity fire. So therefore, I'm going to assume that they can. But this is where it starts getting a little frustrating for me. So what I did is I thought that Overwatch markers were removed at another time than at the end of the turn. And so I went back and I checked the Death Ride Salerno rules. Now all these Death Ride rules series, they are a nice, clear evolution of a design, which is a good thing. But back in this earlier Death Ride Salerno incarnation of the rules for the series, it specifies that Overwatch markers are removed during the suppression recovery phase. And that to me makes sense because that's basically at the end of, it's towards the end of the player turn. So in the Death Ride series, Overwatch is not automatically an option. So what it says is if a side is provided Overwatch markers in the game that you purchase, that side is allowed to use Overwatch. So I never found any Soviet Overwatch markers. So in this game, DRKT, the Soviets cannot use Overwatch. So we're only talking about the Germans here. Only the Germans can use Overwatch in this game. In this particular game right here. Because only German Overwatch markers are supplied. So to me, again, to go back to the Death Ride Salerno incarnation of the rules, the Overwatch markers would be removed at the end, towards the end of the German player turn. So that makes sense to me because, well, it makes a little bit more sense to me, right? Because if they're removed, then when you go to the other side's player turn, those units aren't marked Overwatch anymore. And so it is then clear that they can opportunity fire because there isn't any obvious reason why they can't. So I kind of prefer that, removing them at the end of that player turn. But now my tiny problem is that it's now specified in the DRKT rules that they are removed at the end of the turn. And what that does for me is one thing. I'm going to play this way. Basically, the way I think as a gamer, I think, okay, if the markers specifically stay on until the end of the turn, there must be a reason for that. And I understand that might be the problem. Maybe there's no reason whatsoever. Maybe it's just a convenience thing that Overwatch markers are removed when you get to this marker removal phase because it's a marker and it's being removed, and it doesn't mean anything more than that. But for me, I had some I had some angst here about why are they not being removed. So now when I'm going to the Red Army turn, does it mean anything that these units are still under Overwatch markers? Now I'm thinking, okay, I guess it doesn't, but it's like, why are they still in? Doesn't, you know, I don't know. The other thing I was thinking when I thought, okay, maybe because they're under Overwatch markers, they can't do opportunity fire. Then I was thinking, well, that doesn't make sense because a unit, yeah. So like the Red Army units, they conduct opportunity fire during German movement, but when it gets to their turn, they conduct regular fire. Yeah, they conduct regular fire, so they're firing twice in a turn, so to speak. Two kind, not twice in number, because they could fire more than that, but they're firing two types of fire in the same turn. They're firing opportunity fire during the German player turn and regular fire during their turn. So that's the bit of confusion, and the only thing I'm leaving it at is that I'm going to play rules as written. I'm going to remove the markers at the end of the turn. I'm still going to let them do opportunity fire because I can't. The rules don't say they can't. So that's it. But the thing I was going to say is that I'm going to play this way because maybe there's something I'm not seeing. Maybe there's something in the design where this matters. I can't see it now, but that's why I'm actually going to play it and see how it works. So we'll see. Red Army turn next.